You're watching Truth Download. My name is Jonathan. This episode is going to cover the Tartaria Tablets. How many of you have heard of the Tartaria Tablets before? I know I haven't, not in my mudflood research or in my archaeology and classics minor. However, just typing Tartaria into JSTOR, I stumbled was the first thing here, and seems to be pretty important to a point where you'd think it would be included in undergraduate archaeology courses because it changes the narrative from writing being developed in Sumer, in the cradle of civilization as we know it in the mainstream, to Romania and a little site called, of all names, called Tartaria. Is that a coincidence? I'm not sure. You be the judge. The first article we're going to look at is called Redating Prehistory in Europe by a man named J.A.S. Evans. Interesting. 3 initials in this man's name. Anyways, this article, or this journal article, was published in, I assume it's the Archaeology Journal, in March 1977, and it's published by the Archaeological Institute of America. We're greeted by this lovely man who's approximately 8,000 years old if we're going to abide by the traditional chronology, but I don't think anybody watching this is really down for that. Anyways, let's just read a little of the article here. Until the 1950s, scholars studying prehistory agreed that civilization had spread from a single point of origin within an area bound by the Nile, the Tigris-Euphrates River valleys. According to this theory, agriculture, monumental stone architecture, and astronomy started first in the Near East, and after a decent interval filtered into prehistoric Europe. This view, which can conveniently be called the diffusionist model, still lingers on, a very lively ghost in the minds of most non-specialists who take a layman's interest in prehistory. In the last 2 decades, however, radiocarbon dating has virtually destroyed this model. It's interesting, this article is written in the 70s. I went to school in the 2010s, and I never knew it, but my archaeology professors were still teaching this diffusionist model, which even an academic is telling us is BS here. Anyways, moving on. Even more recently, the accuracy of this technique has been improved by the development of dendrochronology, a dating system based on the information stored in the growth rings of long-lived trees. The 2 methods used together have provided evidence that has radically changed traditional concepts of prehistory. So they're basically telling us that up until at least the 70s, we really shouldn't be trusting the mainstream dates. And as much as I'd love to read this entire article on YouTube, we're going to be looking at a couple other ones, so we'll just scroll through. Do feel free to pause and read the article yourself. As you can see, there's some pretty amazing monuments and stone sculptures and other things that they're showing us. So as we're scrolling down, I'll just read you the next passage that I want you to hear. And it says, if it's not yet time to write new textbooks on prehistory, it is time to discard the old ones. Calibrated radiocarbon dating has totally altered our old view of prehistory. The cradle of civilization was not in the Orient, and in fact anyone searching for the new cradle to replace the old one must now look with particular interest at the Balkans. And I swear to you, I took archaeology classes and I had never heard of a ancient civilization in the Balkans that predated Mesopotamia. And here's a nice chart they give us in this article showing us the mainstream dates for all of these civilizations. And as you can see, you've got Mesopotamia, which is really considered the cradle of civilization, and even, existing before the pyramids in Egypt is put on this timeline as being about 4200 BC, 4500 BC. and you've got this Danubian Tartarian culture that they're pushing back beyond 6,000 years. The tablets themselves to around 5,000 BC or 7,000 years ago. Anyways, one discovery from Romania is a straw in the wind. In 1961, while excavating at a prehistoric mound at Tartaria, Vlasa of the Historical Museum at Cluj uncovered 3 burnt clay tablets. One had on it a hunting scene, but the other 2 bore signs which looked like proto-writing. The tablets found in a pit going down from the bottom layer present analogies with the earliest proto-writing from Mesopotamia, circa 3000 BC or 5000 years ago, and with hieroglyphics found at Knossos on Crete dated to about 1700 BC. The Tartaria Tablets seem to belong to the culture first identified at the site of Vincija on the Middle Danube, which used to be dated by its analogies with the earliest 2 layers at Troy. Now, however, radiocarbon dating has pushed the Vinca culture back into the 5th millennium BC. Now, I'm not one to defend the mainstream archaeologists, but when it comes to Tartaria research, I think it's super interesting now that there's a reference to tablets that in the mainstream are as old or older than anything that we know of. So while most Tartaria research focuses on the more recent past, I think this is an interesting investigation, and in the next article you'll see how similar the tablets really are to the Sumerian and the Crete tablets.
And this is actually the first article that you come across on JSTOR, and it's called the Tartaria Tablets by another man with 3 first initials, MSF Hood, for the Scientific American Journal in May of 1968. And it looks like Professor Hood is trying to save his face. He's saying that these tablets may be 1,000 years older, but they're probably not, and they're probably just showing the links between ancient cultures previously unknown. I think it's a little bit of a cop-out, like as you could see in the last article, is there's a little bit newer information where they're saying that the dendrochronology is definitely pushing that date further back. You get a little explanation of the site of Tartaria and why they even excavated it, and I'll just read the passage. It says, Tartaria is a town some 70 miles south of the city of Cluj. It lies on the Maros River, near a part of Transylvania that was famous in classical times for its rich gold deposits. The Tartaria site is a mound some 250 yards long and 100 yards wide. It was first excavated in 1942 and 1943, but the war forced a halt. Digging began again under the direction of N. Vlasa of the Cluj Institute of History and Archaeology only in 1961. Professor Hood is telling us the main reason for excavating the Tartaria mound was that it was an undisturbed site and might provide a much-needed key to a more famous Neolithic site nearby, the mound of Tordos. This was one of the first Neolithic sites to be studied in Europe. Excavations had been made there off and on since 1874. The most recent excavation had been undertaken in 1910. Soon afterwards, a nearby stream shifted its course and washed away most of the mound. Not all the digging had been up to a modern standard, and it was hoped that a clear stratigraphic record from Tartaria would enable prehistorians to put the large number of artifacts from Tordos into their proper chronological sequence. And before we see all the different scripts side by side, so you can see how similar there's one more passage from this article I want to read to you. And it's about where the actual tablets were found in the Tartaria mound. And they're saying at the lowest level, in a pit filled with ashes. And at the bottom, the diggers found 26 clay figurines, 2 stone figurines, a seashell bracelet, and 3 inscribed tablets. Nearby, the disjointed and scorched bones of an adult human. The pit had evidently been used for a ritual, perhaps a sacrifice involving some form of cannibalism,
and the tablets may owe their preservation to their having been baked in the same fire that scorched the bones and filled the pit with ashes. And we could totally go down a ritual sacrifice and how it never totally went away, how we always think of it being an attribute of ancient civilizations. And it's pretty interesting to me that you've got the Tartaria tablets being found amongst a ritual, what looks like a ritual sacrifice. Anyways, just going to scroll down the rest of this article. You can see where they're putting Tartaria on the map in Romania. The other points of interest here in the article are Mesopotamia and Crete, where the other tablets that are similar are found. There's the stratigraphy of the mound showing you at the bottom where I suppose the burnt ashes were. Here's the example of the Cretan writing, and here's the interesting point that to me pretty much proves that these tablets are legit. They're too similar, but there's clearly a language. And you can see on the left hand side this Jemdet Nasser phase is the Sumerian script. In the center is Knossos hieroglyphic, which is the Crete script, and on the right is the Tartarian script. And again, you be the judge here. They're looking pretty similar to me. There's clearly a civilization in the Balkans, in Romania, at the same time as Sumer, Turkey, and Crete. And first, there's a reference to the ritual sacrifice or the human sacrifice, and then we're seeing this owl-like sculpture from nearby. Pretty interesting. Some hieroglyphics or whatever they are that kind of look like swastikas and stars, but most likely some form of language for sure. I'm not really sure how much we can really trust from any of these journal articles and any of the traditional academia, but it's pretty clear to me that Tartaria is as old as Sumer, is as old as the Mycenaean and the Minoan writings, as old as hieroglyphics. So the Tartaria tablets, there you have it, as old as any writing we have on this planet. And before I let you go, check this out. I went to the nearest town, went 70 miles south, and I wasn't able to find the, quotes, Tartaria mound that these tablets were found in, but I did come across something that I think you'll enjoy, and that is, of course, another one of these star forts. So it's by this city called Alba Giulia in Romania, and I'd never heard of this place, but look at this. How unbelievable is this? So I think in the next video, I'll take a peek around this city and this star fort and see what else we can uncover. I hope you enjoyed. Give me a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and see you next time.